tells you to buy a Honda or a Toyota if you want to save money on a car. Your financially responsible friends say avoid luxury cars because they lose value the minute you drive them off the lot. But what if everything we've been told about smart car buying is completely wrong? What if the best financial decision you could make is buying a Porsche? I know what you're thinking, this guy has lost his mind. But stick with me because the numbers tell a story that nobody talks about at dinner parties or around the office water cooler. And it's a story that could save you tens of thousands of dollars while you drive something that actually makes you smile. Let's start with something most people never really think about. When you own a car, what actually costs you the most money? If you're like most people, you probably think it's gas, maybe insurance. Some of you are thinking about those oil changes and tire rotations. But here's the truth that the car industry doesn't exactly advertise. The single biggest expense of owning a car is something you never see on a monthly bill. It's depreciation, which is just the difference between what you paid for your car and what you can sell it for years later. AAA does this massive study every year, where they track what it really costs to own a vehicle in America. They look at everything from insurance to gas to maintenance to depreciation. In 2025, they found the average American spends $11,577 per year to own a car. And here's the kicker. Out of that nearly $12,000, depreciation alone eats up $4,334. That's more than you're spending on gas. Let that sink in for a minute. Your car is quietly losing more value sitting in your driveway than you're spending filling it up. Now, most cars follow a pretty predictable path. You buy something new, it immediately drops in value the second you sign the papers. Every year you own it, it keeps dropping. By the time you've owned it for 5 years, many cars are worth half or less of what you originally paid. Some luxury cars are even worse. But here's where things get interesting. And I mean really interesting. A research company called IC Cars looked at 800,000 real car sales over the past year. Not projections, not guesses, but actual transactions where real people sold real cars to other real people. They wanted to see which 5-year-old cars held their value the best. And what they found should make every person who's ever bought a sensible sedan feel a little sick. The Porsche 911 and the Porsche 718 Cayman held their value better than any other vehicles in the entire American car market. Not just sports cars, not just luxury cars, better than everything. The 911 lost only about 17% of its value after 5 years. The 718 Cayman lost about 22%. Meanwhile, other premium sports cars like the BMW M4 lost over 50% in that same time period. Think about what that means in real dollars. If you spend $100,000 on a car, losing 17% means you're out $17,000 when you sell it 5 years later. Losing 50% means you're out $50,000. That's a $33,000 difference before we even talk about anything else. Now, I can hear some of you saying, but Porsches cost more to begin with. And yes, they do. A 911 will set you back well over $100,000 depending on how you configure it. But that's exactly why we need to look at this as a percentage and not just sticker prices. Because when you do the actual math, something remarkable happens. That massive depreciation advantage starts to overwhelm every other cost you can think of. Let me show you what I mean. Let's talk insurance, because that's always the first thing people bring up when you mention owning a Porsche. Bankrate looked at insurance rates across the country last year and found that the average full coverage premium for a 911 is $5,354 per year. The national average for all cars is $2,671. So yes, you're paying roughly double to insure a 911 compared to the average vehicle. That's about $2,700 more per year. Over 5 years, that's $13,500 in extra insurance costs. But remember that $33,000 depreciation advantage we just talked about? Even after paying $13,500 more for insurance, you're still $19,500 ahead. And we haven't even factored in that your actual insurance might be way less than that average depending on where you live, how old you are, and your driving record. The point is, depreciation is such a massive number that it can completely overwhelm the other costs that everyone obsesses about. Let's talk about gas, since that's the other thing people love to bring up. The 2025 911 Carrera gets about 21 miles per gallon combined. Is that Prius territory? Obviously not. But here's something fascinating. The average 911 owner drives about 4,100 miles per year. That's less than a third of what the typical American drives. Think about it, most people who buy a 911 aren't commuting 50 miles a day in it. They're driving it on weekends. They're taking it out for drives through the country. They might have another car for the boring stuff. So even at $4 per gallon for premium gas, if you're driving 5,000 miles a year at 21 miles per gallon, you're spending less than $1,000 per year on fuel. That's barely more than some people spend on their daily latte habit. And if you're in that stage of life where you're not commuting as much anymore, maybe you're working from home a few days a week, or you've got flexibility in your schedule, suddenly that sports car isn't racking up the miles like your family hauler used to. Now, let's talk about maintenance, because this is where people really assume Porsche ownership will destroy their bank account. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. Porsche parts and labor aren't Honda Civic prices, but the service schedule itself isn't insane. Oil changes once a year or every 10,000 miles. Brake fluid every 2 years. Major services at longer intervals. When you actually add it up, estimates for 5-year maintenance on something like a 718 Cayman come in around $8,700, plus maybe a couple thousand for unexpected repairs. That's not cheap, but it's also not the financial apocalypse some people imagine. And here's the thing that helps explain why these cars hold value so well. They're actually pretty reliable. J.D. Power does this big survey every year where they ask 3-year-old car owners about problems they've had. Porsche consistently ranks near the top among luxury brands. In 2024, they were second. In 2025, they were third. That's better than a lot of German and British luxury brands people assume are bulletproof. Fewer problems means happier owners. Happier owners means more people want to buy used Porsches. More demand means higher prices. It's a virtuous cycle. J.D. Power also tracks brand loyalty, which is basically how many people who owned a Porsche go back and buy another Porsche. And Porsche leads all luxury brands. When people love the cars enough to become repeat customers, that tells you something about the ownership experience. And it keeps demand strong in the used market because once people experience Porsche ownership, they often don't want to go back. But here's where you need to pay attention, because not every Porsche saves you money. This is critical. The 911 and the 718 Cayman and Boxster are the depreciation champions. Other Porsche models are just okay, or even mediocre by comparison. The Macan is Porsche's smaller SUV. Over 5 years, it loses about 44% of its value. That's better than the luxury compact SUV average of 53%, so it beats its competition, but it's nowhere near 911 territory. On a $70,000 Macan, that advantage translates to about $6,650 less depreciation than average. That's real money, but it's not the massive financial advantage you get with a 911. The Cayenne is the big Porsche SUV. It loses about 49.5% of its value over 5 years, which is basically average for large luxury SUVs. Great vehicle if you need the space and capability, but you're not saving money on depreciation. The Taycan is Porsche's electric car. Projections show it will retain only about 39% of its value after 5 years. That's actually better than the average electric vehicle, but it's still losing 61% of its value. The Taycan is an absolutely incredible car to drive, but you're not buying it to save money. Why do electric cars depreciate so fast right now? A few reasons. Battery technology keeps improving quickly, which makes older EVs feel outdated faster than gas cars. people worry about battery life and replacement costs. Charging infrastructure is still evolving. The whole EV market is in flux, so if you want the save money strategy to work, you need to be specific. You're looking at the 911 Coupe first, the 718 Cayman second. The 911 convertible is still good but depreciates a bit more than the Coupe, about 26% versus 17% over 5 years. Now, there's something important you need to understand about all this data. When IC Cars analyzed those 800,000 car sales, they were looking at cars from 2019 and 2020 model years that sold in 2024 and 2025. Those cars lived through the pandemic used car market when prices went absolutely bonkers because of supply chain issues and shortages. That created unusually strong resale values for a lot of vehicles, especially enthusiast cars like Porsches. Meanwhile, Kelley Blue Book projects that brand new 2025 model 911s will retain about 54% of their value by 2030, which means about 46% depreciation. That's still good enough to be in the top 10 cars in America for resale value, but it's way more conservative than that 17% observed number. The difference is that KBB is projecting into a normalized market where inventory is back to normal and prices aren't inflated by shortages anymore. Both pieces of information are useful. If you buy a used 911 right now, you're anchored to recent history. If you buy brand new, you're betting on the future. This creates a pretty obvious strategy if you want to maximize your odds. Buy a 2 to 4 year old 911 or 718. Let the first owner absorb whatever initial depreciation happened. Then you own it for 3 or 4 years and sell it. Here's the math on that. A 911 Coupe loses about 8% of its value in the first 3 years, 17% by year 5, and 28% by year 7, according to the data. If you buy it at year 3 and sell it at year 6, you're looking at roughly 14 to 15% of the original sticker price in depreciation during your ownership. That's often less than 1 year of depreciation on a brand new luxury sedan. Plus, when you buy certified pre-owned, you get Porsche's CPO warranty, which is 2 years and unlimited miles. No deductible, includes roadside assistance. That's real protection against expensive repair bills during the time you own the car. And CPO cars sell easily when you're ready to move on, because buyers value that inspection process and remaining warranty. Let me paint you a real-world scenario. You're 45 years old, kids are getting older, maybe heading toward college. You've been driving sensible cars your whole adult life because that's what responsible people do. But you've always loved cars, and you're at a point in life where you've got some financial flexibility. You can afford to spend a little more if it makes sense. You start looking at what's out there. You could buy a 3-year-old BMW M4 for maybe $50,000. Nice car, good performance, prestigious badge. Or you could buy a 3-year-old 911 for $85,000. That's a $35,000 difference up front, which sounds like a lot, but let's walk through what happens over the next 3 years. The M4 will probably be worth around $32,000 when you sell it 3 years later. That's $18,000 in depreciation. The 911 will probably be worth $72,000 to $75,000. That's $10,000 to $13,000 in depreciation. So the M4 actually costs you more in depreciation over those 3 years, even though you paid less for it up front. Now add in insurance. Maybe the 911 costs you $5,000 per year and the M4 costs you $3,500. That's $1,500 more per year for the 911, or $4,500 over 3 years. Fuel is probably similar for both since they're both performance cars. Maintenance might be $2,000 per year for the 911 and $18,000 for the M4. So the 911 costs you maybe $600 more over 3 years in maintenance. When you add it all up, the total cost of owning the M4 for 3 years is probably around $30,000 to $35,000. The total cost of owning the 911 is around $27,000 to $32,000. The 911 actually costs less to own despite costing $35,000 more to buy. And one of these cars is a 911. It's the Icon. It's the car that's been the benchmark for sports cars for over 60 years. You get all of that, plus it costs less than the supposedly sensible alternative. This is why the whole conversation about smart car buying is backwards. Everyone's focused on the monthly payment or the sticker price. They assume luxury cars are automatically more expensive. They never actually calculate the complete picture. So they end up in a perfectly nice Honda or Toyota that's cheap to insure and cheap to maintain. But it's also boring to drive, and it's depreciating more than they think because nobody's tracking that invisible cost. When you're shopping for that used 911 or 718, there are some smart moves you should make. First, target cars in popular colors: black, white, silver, gray. These hold value better than usual colors because more buyers want them. Same thing with wheels and options. Don't buy somebody's ultra-customized car with weird paint and every carbon fiber piece known to man. Those custom options don't hold their value. The original owner might have spent $20,000 on custom paint, but you won't get that money back. Second, look at what similar cars are actually selling for before you buy. If 3-year-old examples are selling for only 10 to 15% less than 2-year-old examples, that tells you the depreciation curve is gentle and you're in good shape. Check dealer listings, look at auction results, browse enthusiast forums, get a feel for the real market. Third, get a pre-purchase inspection even on certified cars, and definitely on regular used cars. Spend the $300 or $500 to have a Porsche specialist look at the car. They'll find things you'd never notice. Porsche buyers care deeply about service records and clean history. If you skip the inspection and buy a car with hidden issues, you'll pay for it later. Fourth, shop your insurance hard. That $5,354 national average is just an average. Some people pay $3,000, some pay $8,000. Get quotes from multiple companies. Tell them exactly how you plan to use the car. If you work from home and drive 5,000 miles a year, that's very different from someone commuting 50 miles a day. Bundle with your homeowner's insurance. The spread between the cheapest and most expensive quote for the exact same car can be massive. Fifth, follow the maintenance schedule religiously and keep every receipt. Don't defer oil changes to save $200 because you'll lose way more than that at resale. Buyers of these cars want to see a clean maintenance history. Use authorized dealers or well-regarded independent specialists. Keep everything documented. If you're looking at really old Porsches from the late 90s or early 2000s to save money, there's something called the IMS bearing issue you need to know about. It affected certain engines and can be expensive if it fails. But there are solutions available. Either buy a car where it's already been addressed or budget to do it yourself. The Porsche community is huge and helpful on this stuff. Don't skip the research. Here's what happens when you do all of this right. You buy a 3-year-old 911 coupe with good colors and sensible options. You insure it smartly. You drive it on weekends and nice evenings. Maybe 6,000 to 7,000 miles a year. You keep it maintained. You don't beat on it or track it hard. After 3 years, you clean it up, take great photos, and sell it. Your total cost for those 3 years might be $30,000 to $40,000 depending on your insurance and how much you drive. That's $10,000 to $13,000 per year to own a 911. And that's the same or less than what many people spend owning far less interesting cars that depreciate way faster. You get to own something special, something that makes you excited to drive it, something that turns heads and makes you smile, for the same money you'd spend on a loaded Honda Accord. This requires thinking about cars differently than most people do. Most people make decisions based on monthly payments or sticker prices. They assume luxury automatically means expensive. They never calculate total ownership cost properly. The financially sophisticated approach is to look at everything. What will this car be worth when I sell it? How much will insurance really cost me? How much will I actually spend on gas given how I drive? How much is realistic maintenance? Add it all up and compare it honestly. When you do that math, the 911 and 718 look shockingly good because they dominate on the biggest cost, which is depreciation. But you have to be honest about your situation. If you're going to daily drive it 20,000 miles per year through harsh winters and you've got a bad driving record that makes insurance insane, this strategy doesn't work. The save money approach assumes you're treating the car appropriately. Garage kept, driven enthusiastically but not abused, reasonable miles, properly maintained. It also assumes you plan to sell the car at some point. If you're buying it to drive for 20 years until the wheels fall off, depreciation doesn't matter at all. But if you're like most people who turn over cars every 3 to 7 years, depreciation is enormous, and you can't ignore it. There's one more thing that's hard to quantify, but it's real. The experience of owning a 911 is different. There's a whole community around these cars. Track days, driving tours, club events. You can join the Porsche Club of America and get professional instruction on how to drive better. You can explore what the car can actually do in a safe, controlled environment. The cars are engaging to drive even at normal speeds. There's a connection and involvement that most modern cars just don't offer. This isn't for everyone. Some people genuinely don't care about driving and just want reliable transportation. For them, buy whatever costs the least and don't overthink it. But if you're someone who's always loved cars, who appreciates good engineering and driving dynamics, the 911 or 718 gives you all of that engagement without the financial penalty that usually comes with special cars. You're at a point in life where you've earned some rewards. You don't have to justify every purchase with spreadsheets and guilt. But if you can get the car you really want and have it actually make financial sense compared to the alternatives, why wouldn't you? That's what this is really about. Having your cake and eating it too. Getting to own something special while being financially smart about it. So here's the bottom line. Depreciation is the biggest cost of car ownership, and most people never think about it. The 911 and 718 depreciate less than almost anything else you can buy. That advantage is so large it can overcome higher costs everywhere else. Buy the right model at the right point in its depreciation curve, maintain it properly, and sell it well. Do that, and yes, you can actually save money with a Porsche.